All right. Good Monday, everybody. Hope you're having a good start to your week. Have some fun things to look at here to help you learn how I process through things. And some of you may ask, why do people even do YouTube videos? What's the point? Do you make a lot of money on it? No, I don't make anything on it, and I never really want to make any money off of it. I'm just trying to help people, and the thing that I get from it is when I put my thoughts out there, I have to make sure that they're fully developed because many people are going to look at it and they may challenge me on that. So it kind of gives you an edge as far as it wants you to be better, it wants you to do better. um, if you're that type of person that has a drive, it pushes you to get better and better every day, and that's really what I'm looking for. So hopefully you get something out of this. Going to look at a few different things here, Bitcoin being one of the first things, but we've been talking about indicators, and I wanted to show a reverse engineering way of looking at things and why some of these indicators, these lagging indicators, don't really work too well, and the best way to process your chart thoughts as you look at your altcoins or whatever it may be. I'll make that real quick, then we'll get into Bitcoin and some other things. If you're not following me on Twitter, it's at Bike for Sale. This is it right here. I post things every day, just to help people out. And some of these coins may be ones that you follow, so you can find good buying opportunities. You can, find out when the top's near, that sort of thing. So just keep an eye on it. Okay, so we'll jump into this, and this is just a clean chart for Caspa. A lot of people are familiar with this coin because it was one of the first ones to really take off during this bull run, and it's been a very strong coin, and it probably will continue to be. I know, for example, Braver Crypto, he considers it a high conviction coin. So, this may be one that you want to look at. Clearly, we've talked about it before, how anything over the 50 RSI is bullish. So this is kind of the bullish zone. And then this would be your bearish zone under 50. And, anytime a major cross happens on like a daily chart, or cross up happens, you can tell that it's affecting the price. It gets parabolic here. And then on the opposite side of things, it gets bearish when it crosses below like that. I don't know what the opposite of parabolic is. Maybe there's a word for it. Uh, anyway, these number one, the first thing you should be looking at anytime price is going up and then you see it start to roll over is you want to start looking at these shoulders right here. And it doesn't have to stop here. It could come back down here to the imbalance. And what we call an imbalance or a fair value gap is just where price breaks out. If you looked at maybe a weekly chart, yeah, if you look at a weekly chart, there's a big gap here that's never been filled. Typically, like on a daily chart, you'll see it pump and then it'll come back 50% back into the candle and then pump. See, like this one right here is a really good example. This candle pumped and then this candle, uh, you know, it 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 went down first. That's what this wick is, and then it pushed all the way back up, and it even came back one more time. So it created that shoulder. So you can expect KAS to come down here, and I actually posted that yesterday, and I said, it'll probably come back into this shoulder here at minimum. And so the way that you can process this as you're looking through your own charts is, if you want to use RSI, that's fine, but just understand it lags. And if you're looking at the daily chart, it lags a lot. So you're not going to get your information until things have either already rolled over or things are pumping. Well, I mean, you could have already taken the price the price action here where it pushed up a little bit and it retested that 50 line and then came up. But these are hard to find. I mean, you'd have to be watching the chart really closely. So what I would say is, instead of watching the daily chart, is you look for the setup first. And really, you have to do this on a weekly chart. And KAS might be a really bad example because you need a lot more history in this case. But just imagine that there's some price action over here and there's a good support line because of this price action. And it broke out of this, which, it was support one time, became resistance. Now it's turned into new support. So you can suspect that, it could come down here, but it doesn't have to. Um, But this is the place that you would want from a macro standpoint. You'd want to look at buying most likely. And there's going to be other lines over here. Of course, we're looking at the weekly chart. So if you were down on a daily chart at this shoulder, there's going to be another area of resistance or support, sorry. And so this would be another place that you would want to take along. And this is probably what's going to happen with gas. It's just going to come down here and then bounce from here. This is a secondary idea. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it could, especially if Bitcoin, falls down to its support level. And I'll show you that here in a second, how it's very possible that it might. And we know that alts bleed when Bitcoin bleeds. They bleed a lot more. So the idea here is that, you could take a trend line and do like this on RSI, and then when it broke out, you could take the long. But the better thing to do is to go down to like an hourly chart. And we already got one this morning, but here's what we would call a bullish divergence, where price was creating a lower low while RSI was creating a higher low. So price coming down, momentum coming up. That's all you're looking for there. So that's one idea. The other idea is to think in terms of money flow. And if you have something like Market Cipher, you could wait until, which is the best money flow indicator, I think. I don't know if there's a good free one or not, but this is a paid indicator. But what you'd want to look for is red money flow crossing into green on like an hourly chart. And I'll show you a good example. Yeah, well, it crossed way back here. Maybe we look at like a 3 or 4 hour chart. Yeah, right here where money flow crossed over. This is about where the RSI was crossing up as well. So money flow went from red to green. You would have felt real safe taking along here, and it never crossed back down to red until here. So look how much price action moved up through all of this, even though it was real choppy. Price act. The green money flow was real choppy. So it'll fake you out sometimes if you look at the low time frames. Just zoom out to the 4 hour or the daily chart, find where your levels are first, your support resistance levels, and then wait for price to come back into those levels, and then check, okay, is my money flow coming up into green on the lower time frames, or on my RSI am I creating any kind of bullish divergences or anything? Here's a, no, that's not really a good one. Never mind. That's the only thing I don't like on a 4 hour chart. You really have to go down to like an hourly chart to find stuff like this. But yeah, here's another one. Price was creating a bunch of lower lows there, and this one was creating a bunch of higher lows. One thing you have to do is the time should be about the same. Like this one didn't really, I guess you could say it came from all the way back down here, but whatever time frame you're looking at here, like if I do this one, this is probably more correct. It has to be the same length here. But these are hard to find in real time, just understand that. But play out this concept in your mind as you're looking at price action, and see if you can begin to find patterns that help you make money. Here's another one where there's a kind of a falling wedge on RSI. Now, as soon as this breaks out, that's probably when KAS is going to find its bottom and starts moving as well. So there's another idea. I really like to use, and you can do the same thing here on price action. I really like to use trend lines to find, like, I don't want to mess around with this. Like if this is just going to do this and stay down here for a while, I don't really want to play it until it breaks out. I'm wasting time here. I'm losing money possibly if I took a long. Of course, if you're in this long term, don't worry about it. This thing is going to go up again, but this is more for short-term traders. And it could just stop here and break out and retest and be ready to go again. I think that's a lot less likely. Just realize that you have to respect the trend line, and you can definitely get fake outs like this, and then it comes back into the range and comes down. So you have to see some kind of retest of support somewhere, whether it comes down here and does the, whoops, whether it comes down here and keeps going down and then just dips for a little bit, does a little spring, comes up, retest, and then goes. You have to see market structure. That's really what you're looking for. It has to be a higher high, has to be a higher low, and then you feel confident. You've broken out of this trend line, higher high, higher low, market structure starting to build again, and that's when you know it's ready. So there's a couple ideas that you can use. Moving averages also, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, but I really like the basics like this. Okay, so most of you know that I am a pattern trader. I like to look for patterns because a lot of times they work out. And I'm not talking about things like head and shoulders or inverted head and shoulders. I'm talking about patterns in historical price action for Bitcoin or the altcoin that I'm looking at. Because these patterns do play out over and over. You just have to be aware that there are times when you get faked out on them. Maybe you were looking at it wrong. I mean, I've done this before. You were looking at the chart wrong, or maybe you got down to a really low time frame and you got lost in the pattern. So I would keep it over 4 hours minimum. Don't look at anything under 4 hours because it just gets too choppy at that point. And I want to show how I've always felt like this bull market looked more like 2015, 2016. Well, actually, all the way to 2017. But the bear market itself, 2015, and then the start of the bull market, 2016. I always felt like it was in that area. And so this would be like December, January, February. The months aren't going to match up exactly, but they're close. Um, so I've already marked it out here. This is kind of the range that I'm seeing it in currently. And if I wanted to get real specific, I would say, I don't know, something like this maybe. Anyway, it's somewhere in here. I don't know exactly where, but I'm gonna keep this where I had it because this is where we're headed, I believe. And we could be looking at, I don't know, I really don't know when it's going to happen, but within 2 to 4 weeks, we could see this final dip and then sideways action. And this is really similar to what happened in March 2020, except it's just on a much lower time frame. The structure is much smaller. I'm definitely not saying we're going to get a black swan event or anything like that. Nobody can predict that. But these patterns do play out similarly, and I have made money using these ideas before. All right, so here is all of this structure right here, and I'll prove this here in a second, is this. And so I just want to make that clear first, and then this structure is this one. So let's run some fibs and look at this. We're going to take it from this bottom to actually this wick right here because it got all the way up to that wick. And that's kind of unconventional, but I just want to show that this entire move, this pattern came down to the 618. And let's just see if that holds true for here. Because this wick was actually up here. This one, it was over here. So yeah, I'm just looking at the top here. And so it's pretty close. It was almost 618 there. It almost hit it exactly. I guess you could take it up to actually that wick right there. And it did touch it. So this is just to make a point on this existing structure we're looking at right now. So if I start from the imbalance here where the breakout happened, the local low of that area, and go to the very top, it actually, it overshot it. And I'm not saying it's going to happen this way this time. It may not overshoot at all, but it at least hit the 618. And it had a big wick and then had a V-shaped recovery. And so here's the same thing, starting at the imbalance to the very top. So we could just have a small dip and just come to the 618. I think it's a little bit unlikely that something like that happens. I think we're going to hit this 0.75 or the 0.88 most likely, because that's where the breakout happened over here and it wicked all the way down to it almost. Yeah, I really like that level. So I'd say around 38K. I mean, I don't know. Nobody can predict this stuff. I don't know for certain that it's actually going to work this way as far as what the ultimate bottom is. I know some other people are saying like 37.5 or so, which would be exactly at the kind of the mini breakout it did, and then it took off from there. Kind of like the last fake out, I guess is the way you'd put it before this move. So anywhere between 37.5 and 38.3, somewhere in here is what I would say. And just understand that before this takes place, we can still get a move up. And here's what that looks like. And these getting these structures while they're still playing out is a little bit tougher. I may look at a different timeline just to see, because this is clearly not very easy to recognize compared to this. But here's what I would say about it, because this really extended much higher than this one did. You know, it kind of shot up like that, or maybe this whole thing shot up like that. And that's why I was thinking like 47K to 52K could still hit. And maybe this is just a short lived and it still pushes up there. But you know, if this was the top, then we're going to delay moving up again substantially. I mean, you know, breaking above this level until maybe, I don't know, January sometime. I don't know exactly when. I was kind of hoping Christmas would be you know, a bullish one, but we'll just have to see. Doesn't mean it won't be. But as far as base case goes, I think it's more likely that this comes up a little bit and rolls over. And so what this looks like is this is basically this. And then this is that. And then you've got that high right there. So the question becomes now, is this little shoulder this bigger shoulder here? I mean, this is a daily chart versus a 4-hour chart, so it's very unlikely that that's true. It's probably more likely that it's actually probably more likely that it's this way. I'm gonna have to stretch this out a bit. Let's see. I want to make sure I get this right, because this is very hard to, you know, it just looks a lot different. It's the same pattern, but it looks a lot different. So I'm trying to make sure, because usually what happens with me is I end up being way too early on these patterns. Like I see it and it turns out that I needed to wait for price action to play out more before I really understood. So what you could do here is just use fibs to help you out. And let's take this little imbalance area right here. And I think that would be roughly equal to this one. Let's just see, that would be the 8.8. Well, it already came past the 8.8 here. Yeah, I'm not sure I can use that in this case. Well, they got close here though. Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult, but I would say that this could still be this. And that makes me think that this structure here is a lot smaller than this one. You know, because it was a daily chart and this is a 4-hour chart that we're looking at currently. So here's your little W, here's an M. So here's our W, here's our M. And it rolled back over. So that's that. And so you get one more push up, maybe into here. Let's see if I can figure this out. Yeah, you might get it up to here and then sideways and then down. And then that's when it makes its final. I don't know, this is that at the right level. I'm going to make sure I give it the right level here. So up, sideways, and I think I was talking about 38.5 roughly. So yeah, there's my base case right there. Up a little bit sideways and down to 38.5. No, like 38.5 and some, like I said, some people say 37.5 or something. So, you know, somewhere in there anyway. And then once you get that, it's gonna come up a little bit, go sideways, and you know, probably some boring action for a little bit, and then it'll take off again. And then as things progress, you'll get these really sharp corrections that'll scare everybody out. It'll clear out all of the you know, the leverage traders that have their stop losses too tight. And then eventually we're going to hit this point where it just gets real parabolic. And I'm talking about Bitcoin, but we know that Bitcoin drags altcoins up with it. And then when Bitcoin rests, as long as it doesn't just crash really quick, usually altcoins can perform much better. It can outperform Bitcoin during that time. But sometimes when Bitcoin goes up, altcoins do lag quite a bit, and it can create a scenario where Bitcoin dominance is going up, and some people are confused by that. They think Bitcoin dominance is just going to fall off the cliff because everybody thinks it's alt season. It's not always alt season. I mean, there's going to come a point where it's up only for alts, just like it was not too long ago. But just understand that these periods of rest, like for coins like KAS, they have to happen. Things can't just go straight up forever. If you look at the daily chart on this, I mean, this thing hasn't had much of a rest at all the way up, and it's up, what, 50%? Right, I said 50%, I meant 50x. It's up over 100x, at least on this chart. I don't know what it is exactly. But anyway, that's that. Let's see here. Yeah, DXY may come up just a little bit. It's got a little inverted head and shoulders thing going on. It's got a gap to fill. Could come up to 103 or so. Um, this is one coin I was looking at called TURT. Um, it's kind of similar to Mubi. It's within the BRC20 narrative, but I was going to buy it here. But the thing I don't like about it currently is it's probably running into resistance. And VWAP here, this yellow area is starting to turn down. So just be careful with ones like this. Be careful with all altcoins right now in general, just because they look like they're going to pump on a short time frame, like the hourly here, doesn't mean that they can keep going up, especially if Bitcoin's showing weakness. Um, so even though I still expect some kind of little shoulder to be made here, altcoins can run up if this happens. But if this rejects again, which I feel like it could, and it could even come up to here, if this was to roll back over, then altcoins would suffer, obviously. So just be careful. You don't want to be buying tops right now. Currently, we are under the 50 RSI on the 4-hour. So technically, we are still bearish. And you could put you a little trend line here. If you get a break above this trend line and then it breaks over the 50 RSI on the 4-hour, then that's a really good sign. But we can revisit that later. It's not there yet. It's still bearish. So yeah, they're going to fake people out. You got people longing with leverage and shorting with leverage up and down throughout all this price action, and they're going to keep liquidating them up and down as well. But when we come out of this structure, once things settle down a little bit, there's going to be some coins that I think are ready to go, and they're things like Phantom and REEF. Some of these coins have not had their move yet, and DeFi in general hasn't had its move just yet. So these are some of the coins you could look to, that could have a good pump once Bitcoin is through with all this. Which, like I said, it could take 2 to 4 weeks. I don't know. But I would suspect sometime in January we'll get our answer that the bottom's in and we're ready to move back up. Let's see. And of course, we're headed into the halving, in April next year. So no matter what happens right now or within this next 2 to 4 weeks, I would say by February, I'd watch for an even bigger dip, because it always happens. It either happens 2 months before halving or it happens pretty much right at the halving. It's kind of a liquidity event. It's not that the halving causes it. It's just, the people that are in power, the people that print the money, are the ones that are pulling the strings that set up this algorithm. It's clear throughout all altcoins, Bitcoin, Ethereum, everything. It's clear that patterns repeat over and over, and all these exchanges are connected. But we can still make a lot of money. Obviously, we just got to play their game. Pond is another one that's been pushing up against resistance for a long time, and I think it's going to break out after this this resistance that we're running into. ICP is a really good example. I would say anytime you're looking at charts, if you can look at the BTC pair, if there is one, it's really good to compare that versus other coins you're considering. You can see, I'll just give you one quick example and we'll wrap this up. This is just kind of like homework if you want to practice this on your own. But if you look at REEF on the daily chart, well, it's probably even better to look at like a 2-day chart or something, because the structures are much clearer. Bitcoin charts are pretty choppy. Bitcoin pair charts. I think I'll even go to the 3-day. But you can see that there was a point where ICP finally found its bottom, which is kind of what REEF did here. And then this small structure down here is what REEF is going through. It's just building some market structure. It's going to do one final shakeout, which could be this one right now. And then once once Bitcoin allows altcoins to do their thing, once it's no longer volatile, you'll get this big pump. And that's exactly what ICP did. That's what I expect REEF to do. That's what I expect audio to do. Here's audio BTC. It's doing the same thing, just in a flatter structure. So anyway, these are some thoughts that you can use to assist you. Maybe help you find some good plays in the future. If you have any questions, post them in the comments down below, and I'll answer them. I tend to watch my Twitter a lot more than I do my YouTube, so it'd be better if you message me there. And appreciate y'all watching. Y'all have a good week.